Hey guys, this is Jonathan and welcome to a C++ tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to be learning about the if statement. This is one of the building blocks of programming. Normally, or up till now I should say, we have always been making statements that will run regardless. So for instance we say cout something and it will run no matter what. Every time we run this program, the computer I should say, will see this line and it will output something. But sometimes we want to have a condition. So sometimes this statement will run, sometimes it won't, depending on the situation. For instance, if you are told to walk out the dog if you haven't already. So here you have an if statement, and depending on whether you have or not already determines what you are going to do. So in programming we can say if something, let's say it will either evaluate to a true or a false. If this thing, then do everything in these curly brackets or parentheses. So we can then output something. So if false, then do something. Now obviously it's not going to print out something at all because false is obviously not true. But if this statement evaluates to being true, then it will output something. There we go. We get something. And I'll just add in the end line there. Alright, but we normally also don't deal with true or false directly in programming. Instead, we have a condition, for instance, if 5 is greater than 3. So now here the program has to evaluate this situation. Is 5 greater than 3? And the program says that it is, and it prints out something. If we had asked is 1 greater than 3, we can see that the output will not print out this something. And we don't need to just deal with this greater than sign. We can also deal with the one that's the smaller than sign. So now if 1 is less than or smaller than 3, print out something. And you will see that that is true. Now there is even more options. We can add this little equal sign after either the greater than or the less than symbol. So either this way or that way. And this means if 1 is less than or equal to 3. So it will still, 1 is still smaller than or equal to 3, but also 3 is smaller than or equal to 3. Whereas if we didn't have that equal sign, this would evaluate to false, since 3 is not smaller than 3. So here you see something is printed out. And there's another option we have, sort of a last option, which is the equals sign. If 3 equals 3. But you can see that there's a little error in this if statement. And I'll explain why in just a moment. Remember when we would declare variables, we would have, for instance, an int, and we call it an x, and set it equal to 5. Now we used this little equal sign, and we were not testing is x equal to 5. Instead, we were saying set x to 5. We were telling x to be the value of 5. And that's what a single equals does. So we are not wanting to assign the value of 3 to 3. Instead, we're wanting to check if 3 is equal to 3. So what we do is we add a second equals, and now we're comparing the two instead of assigning one to the other. So now if 3 equals 3, print out something, and it did. And another thing that we programmers don't usually do is deal with numbers, because if we wrote if 3 equals 3, well, as a programmer, I could have already told you that this is always going to be true, and so there's no point having an if statement. So instead what if statements are usually used for is with variables inside the if statement. So for instance, if x equals 3, and we could even create another variable, call it y, let's say, and set it equal to 4. And now we can say if x is greater than, let's say, or equals to y. And now we're actually testing something that's more useful. And this is true. X is greater or equal to y. So we could take an input, as we'd learned in our previous tutorial, and assign these values, and it could output if it was greater than or equal to the other second variable, this y variable. So that's the start of how the if statement works. There's a little more that we'll deal with in the next tutorial. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.